Kris here for just a few seconds to tell you about another little piece of child-free fiction you might not know about. Clarification, I don't think child-free fiction always needs to include a child-free character who doesn't have kids. There's no conflict in that, and it's not very interesting. If you check out the short story, it's a Kindle short called To My Daughter, under the name Kris Jane, that's ChrisJane. You have a woman who is spiritually child-free, but who's made a decision based on conditioning, and we see how that goes for her. Hi.
Hola.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Lenora Faye. I'm a child-free lifestyle advocate, speaker, and moderator, most notably for the 2021 Virtual Child-Free Conference. I also host a show called Childfree Morning Chat on Clubhouse, part of Childfree Club, and you can find me on Instagram at childfreeblog.
Hi, I'm Kristen, and I'm a fiction writer primarily, but I also do some opinion writing, I guess, on Medium. Much of it child-free, some of it not. Most recently, I'm the author of the novel The Age of the Child, in which the overturn of Roe v. Wade has some unanticipated consequences that take a surprising turn from one generation to the next.
Hi, I'm Isabel. I am the creator of The Uprising Spark. I am a coach for child-free women. I help women like myself who have decided not to have children voluntarily and consciously to overcome feelings of guilt, fear, anger, or anything that doesn't feel aligned with their lives, to live freely and completely empowered with their choice. And I'm also organizing the first all child-free women only trip in February. We're going to Punta Cana in Dominican Republic, and we are the 3 founding non-mothers of Childfree Girls. For those of you who are not watching us on YouTube, but rather listening to us on podcast, Kris is here as an anonymous guest. We're protecting her identity. If you're watching us on YouTube, you probably already seen Lucille in her place. And today's conversation is going to start with Kris telling us a little bit about her story, why she decided to embrace the child-free lifestyle, because that was a message that you sent us. There was this message about how some things have happened in your life that ultimately led you to this decision. And we thought this was a great topic for our conversation. So if you could share with us anything that you'd like to share with the audience, we'd love to hear you.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say that my journey to child-free is kind of not maybe like what you would think of as like a stereotypical one. Growing up, it was forced into my head, you finish high school, you go to college, you get married, you have kids, you buy a house, the whole typical stereotype of what it is to be US woman, whatever. And I would say when my husband and I had started dating, we'd initially said that, had the do you want to have kids conversation. And both of us were kind of on board because we do come from somewhat big families, and family is something that's really important to us. And we just kind of always assumed that we would have kids, and then fast track maybe 4 or 5 years into our relationship, we approached the conversation again, and it was like, do you still want to do this? And he was like, I don't know. Do you? I was like, I'm not sure. I don't really think that that's something I want to pursue. And we had an open, honest conversation about it. And we both decided that moving forward, being child-free would be kind of the journey for us. Part of that on my end is that when I was younger, when I was 16, my first boyfriend died. And just seeing the grief that his mother went through, losing her child, and also on top of the fact that he was adopted because they couldn't have children biologically, is just kind of something that really stuck with me over the past 15 years or so. And that was kind of one of my extra pushes over the edge to decide to be child-free.
My question really centers around the experience with your boyfriend. I mean, it's going somewhere as far as, did you ever talk to his mother, about grief were just because like that is like, okay, 16, that is as a traumatic experience, and you watching that, was that something you were able to vocalize with her or to anyone around, even years later after it happened, aside from coming on the show? Because it's kind of, it's something that stews
I
right in your
mean,
brain.
oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't really something that I ever vocalized to his mother. I mean, obviously, going through the grief and the trauma of it all, it was it wasn't something that I felt that I had the not I don't want to say the right to speak to her about it, because my pain as a 16-year-old was nothing compared to what I could imagine her pain being as a mother losing her only child. Um, and I didn't really have the opportunity to talk to many people about it because I didn't want to bring it up for fear that it would be maybe misconstrued, and also that like at that point in time I didn't really have a lot of people to talk to about that whole situation, because he died very suddenly, and it wasn't like anticipated at all. Like he wasn't sick or anything. So it was just kind of, I didn't feel like I had the outlet, and now years later, I feel like it's something that I can talk about and not feel like I have to restrict what my feelings were back then, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense that seeing what his mother went through would really just stick, because I mean there can't be a harder pain than losing your child. I just can't, at least I can't imagine one. Um, and God, even just losing someone you love so young. I'm sorry, I'm assuming you loved him, but losing someone you cared about so young
Yeah.
um, would also be like I can't imagine trying to make sense of those feelings at 16. I had a hard enough time at 40 something when my dad died. So that also seems like something that as you got older you would think, wow, if this is what it felt like and he was just a boyfriend, if it were my child, wow, that would be horrifying. Um do you
Right.
think if there were some magical way to guarantee that your child would not die before you, nothing bad would happen to your child in your lifetime, um or even until your child's natural old death, even after you were dead, if you knew nothing bad was ever going to happen in terms of major injury or death, would that change your mind?
I don't think that it would change my mind, because that is just one of the pieces, right? There's a lot of different reasons why myself and other women choose to be child free. Just not wanting to be a parent, just for the simple reason that I don't want to, not wanting to have to go through pregnancy, the inevitable costs that come along with it, the um, possibility that we may need a bigger home, and a bigger home may increase bills, and um, potentially changing the relationship that I have with my partner. It's not just one single thing. And definitely, if there was a magic way to guarantee, I don't think that that would change my mind.
It's funny you asked that question, Kristen, because someone did pose this question on our YouTube page, giving us all these ideal scenarios to see if we would say yes to having a child, including all you would have to do is birth and everything else would be taken care of. And
Is that
then like
all?
I think, yeah, exactly. I think I was the only one of the three of us that answered that question because I was just in a playful mood and just wanted to, I don't know, boost the metrics of our video or something. But they kept asking, and then there wasn't, even the pregnancy experience. They were trying to sugarcoat everything to see if they could get an answer of, okay, fine. Under these conditions, I would have a child. So, banking on Kristen's question to you, um do you find whether in conversations with non-child free people or even in any child free community that you do spend time in, do you find that people are trying to have that experience where they're trying, someone's trying to convince them to find at least one circumstance where you'd have a kid? Have you experienced that, or do you
Oh my
see it
God.
anywhere?
Yeah, for sure. One example that I can think of just off the top of my head is that my sister is actually a nurse in labor and delivery. And she's like, well, if you're worried about going through pregnancy and you're worried about that, like, I'll just deliver your baby. And I'm like, no, 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 hold up. Like, we're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. And that is also like not a way that you should like sugarcoat the fact that I should have, a child, is that you would deliver it. That has nothing to do with anything as far as I'm concerned with being a parent. Just like the awkwardness of my sister being like, I'll deliver your baby. And I'm like, no.
No, you don't want your sister down there. At least I don't. I have a sister. I don't want her anywhere near that.
There's that, yes.
But I think one of the reasons people might ask, well, if this, then that, the way I just did, is because, uh, like, for example, a woman just wrote an article or a piece on Medium about not wanting to have kids. And after saying she didn't want to be a parent, she said also the world is in such bad shape that I can't in good conscience bring a child into this world in the shape that it's in. And also this other stuff is wrong. Um, and the thing is, once you start saying, well, the environment's just so bad, or people are just so mean, and I don't want to subject my child to other mean people, it does start to sound like I'm not having a child because of these conditions. So someone would be curious, well, if those conditions changed, would you do it then? And I think it's because people just don't stop at, I don't want them. I mean, that's as simple. Like, as soon as you start offering, giving reasons you don't want them, those are conditions, and conditions are changeable. But if you just don't want them, period, end of story, because you know that if those conditions change and if everything were absolutely perfect, you still wouldn't have one because you just don't want one. So, like, and I'm not talking about you right now. I'm talking just about stuff I see a lot, and it's like, I don't know if there's, again, this is not about you. I don't know if there's a tendency to want to soften the blow on people who think that we should be having kids. Like, oh well, I mean, geez, look what I'd be bringing this kid into, even if I did. To make it sound like something maybe they can latch onto and understand. Um, but
Yeah.
it does generate questions and but ifs. So, if you don't want, like, there are, I believe, some people who genuinely want kids and who aren't going to have them because conditions are bad. And if conditions change, they'll do it. Um, but otherwise, if you don't want them, you out there listening, just say you don't want them. Period.
Unless you
Yeah.
have a
I
blog or
think
a
that
pod.
that's definitely a pressure.
Oh, for
Sorry.
sure.
No, I was going to say, if you have something child free related to promote, though, go into detail, because then it allows you to market.
I think that's what Kristen was saying is it's true that people, I would say people in general, but I would say especially women, we are like so trained to like have to explain ourselves and say sorry all the time for some reason. And it's true. I mean, if you just say I don't want them, that's it. You don't need to explain anything else. And I think when you start explaining things as well, even if the other person isn't really asking for explanations, it's a lot easier for them to argue why you're wrong. So, I don't want to have them because, I don't know, the pain of losing a child will be too much. And then they would say, oh, but the joy of having one is a lot more than, blah, 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 whatever. And it becomes this never ending thing of back and forth. Whereas if you just say, I don't want them, and don't like just stop it there, they can't really argue against that. What are you going to say? Or what do you mean you don't want them? You don't want them? I don't want them. Like, do you want a giraffe living at home? No, you don't. Well, I don't want a child living in my house. It's the same thing, I guess. Well, not exactly. I would have a giraffe, but
I would pick the giraffe.
Yeah. I'll cut a hole in my roof for the giraffe.
not exactly. But you get my point. So I think that's one of the easiest ways to stop bingos is that one. Just say I don't want them. Don't have to explain.
See, I like the approach of going into not necessarily explanation as to why I don't want them, because I don't want to be a mom. That's my reason. But I like having an open conversation because I find the people that are questioning have something more to say about their own personal experience. Meaning they might have felt pressured and so that's why they had kids and they've never been able to admit it until now, or is lead or they're wanting to support a family member or a friend that's also child free. But it's just the initial conversation starts out a bit rocky. So it sounds like a bingo or a troll comment, but really it could be leading somewhere to a good, genuine conversation. So I like that approach because, well, I'm a conversationalist. So, that's part of the territory. But I also am curious to see what is their mindset. Also, because, awareness is good for everybody involved. But also, too, they might want to say something or confess something or, that helps them. So I like that approach myself.
I don't think bingos necessarily come from a bad place all the time. I think there are people who are genuinely, like Kristen said, curious about things. And there are people who really don't know any better. There are, in general, bingos is just those comments that we get, and maybe they come from a bad place, like poking, try to poke the bear. Maybe they don't. Maybe they come from a good place. Maybe they come from a neutral place. Maybe they come from a place of ignorance. You never know. But sometimes you don't want to engage. Sometimes you just really do not want to get into that conversation. So I want to ask Kris, how do you deal yourself with comments, from family, friends, peers, when you tell them you don't want to have children, or when they, know that you don't have kids?
I feel like for some people it's kind of a shock because I've been told my whole life, oh my God, babies love you so much, you're so good with kids, you would be a great mom, like all of those typical things, that people say to you when you say, I don't, I'm not going to have kids. Um, and I would think for the most part, I do feel that pressure of trying to say different things to certain people to try to justify it in a way that makes sense to them. Because a lot of people in my life, for me personally to say, it's just because I don't want them, for them, it's not good enough. It's not good enough of a reason for them because that doesn't make sense to them. Well, you love kids, you're good with kids. Why wouldn't you want any of your own? Like you said that you don't want them, but I don't accept that as your answer. So at that point, that's where I feel like I kind of have to like say all of these other things of, the money aspect of it, being pregnant, like even something silly like making jokes about it at this point because it gets uncomfortable. Like I don't want to give up drinking beer and wine for 9 months, like trying to make light of the situation when they take things so seriously and take them so personally.
Valid
As if
though.
my choice to not have children somehow affects their life, which it really doesn't.
I mean, you probably are wonderful with drafts, but you don't want 3 of them in your house either. So, I mean, it's just people like it. I think 2 of you have said this, that something that people can latch onto, and people understand kids. Not necessarily understand kids, but the having of children, that's something that's relatable. And it's funny how, well, it's not funny, it's sad that we live in a time, or we're just programmed to not be able to think out of the box. It takes effort to think out of the box and make different decisions. It really does. And people who choose not to have children are not given enough credit or praise, if you will, for making that decision and sticking with it, because it goes against pretty much everything we've been taught, right? So I was curious about your husband's experience. Does he, as a couple, what are the questions like? And does he ever have to have these conversations by himself about not having kids?
So that's definitely a great question, and something that we've kind of noticed just from like the different family dynamics. So my husband's mother, my mother-in-law, is one of 12 children. So he has a massive family. Like there's so many of them that I sometimes lose count and I forget names. And we do a family reunion every year, and it's awesome. But eventually, there's always the conversation because he has 2 older siblings, and I have two older siblings and a younger sibling, and it's always, oh, when are you guys having kids? It's never an are you having children? It's a when are you having children? So for a while, we were able to kind of dodge the questions because I want him to be ready to have that conversation with his family, um, and have the conversation like on his own terms and not be forced into the conversation. Um, so we were able to kind of like dodge the bullet, so to speak, for about, oh gosh, maybe like a year and a half, 2 years, because I was still a student. So it was like, oh, that makes sense. You know, they got married, but now she's in school, so maybe she doesn't want to be pregnant while she's in school. So we haven't definitively said anything to his family about the child-free choice. And I know that the conversation will be coming soon. I don't know how we're going to navigate that, so to speak. But overall, I would say that I definitely get the questions asked more directed towards me than he gets them himself, which is mildly frustrating because it takes two people to have a child and two people to make the choice. So why is all of the pressure always on the woman? And that's something that definitely grinds my gears a little bit. So he typically brushes it off. And if people do ask him, he gets the question, do you have kids? And I get the question, when are you having kids? So it's a different frame around it.
I'm assuming that because his mother is one of 12, that she thinks it's very important for you two to have kids, or does she, or from what you have seen, is it just that she assumes it's going to happen? Like how upset, based on whatever it is you know of her, how upset do you think she would be if she were to find out that you two have no intention of having kids?
I think that she has somewhat of an inclination that we are not going to have children. I think that once it's verbalized to her, I do think that she's going to be upset about it because that's her baby and she wants her baby to have babies. And because of the size of his family, he was always surrounded by children. You know, he has cousins that are in their 50s and he has cousins that are 3. So babies have always been around the family, and the way that their family dynamic is that the cousins and the older siblings take care of the younger ones, you know, when everybody gets together, and everybody, you know, plays together and, you know, occupy the kids type thing. So I do think that she will be upset just because of how I interpret her feelings of her son. But I also do know that she is very much an advocate for it's your life and you need to make the best decision for your life, and I'm not going to stand in the way of that choice. I may be upset about it, but I would never make you feel bad about your choice that is best for you.
She sounds great.
She's fantastic.
Well, I was thinking, you said you have family reunions every year or so. So first, and there's a reason why I'm asking this question. Do you do talent shows or anything like that when you all get together? And there's a reason why I'm asking this question. It's just, it sounds random, but
yes.
I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. Yeah.
Yes. So my in-laws, his family, they do talent shows. They have, so every year, because there's 12 children, we each get a calendar. The calendar goes in order of the birth of the 12. So my mother-in-law was the 9th, so we have September as our calendar page. There's a talent show. There is like Family Fest over the summer. They do another get together in the winter for Christmas. There are so many traditions with my husband's family, for sure, and talent shows is one of them.
Okay, so the reason I asked this question, because I thought, what if you do a stage production of we're not having a baby, and announce it to the family in a fun way, or put it on a calendar, like, so then they're flipping through, and when your month comes along, it's like, hey, guess what? We're not having kids. It's just a fun way to bring it up. Because, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm curious. Anyone take this suggestion and run with it, because everybody in my family knows that I'm not having kids. So What do you think about that idea? I think it could be fun, depending on the family. But your family sounds fun.
I It definitely would be fun, but my husband and I are more so the let's stand in the back and watch everything from afar. We're not really the like let's go get them type of couple where we're like, yeah, we're gonna, go and do a talent at the talent show. We're definitely not that extroverted.
But that would make the whole thing that much more significant and a surprise because
Yeah.
nobody would expect that from you. So anyway, it's just a thought.
Could you imagine if, like, instead of like a gender reveal, you had a party and it was like, we're not having kids?
Yeah, exactly.
And like the blow up things where like all the confetti comes out, it's just like black and like sequins of like no stork sign.
Or like dust.
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 Or nothing. There's like nothing comes out.
Or nothing.
It's like a confetti.
It's just
like
poof.
exactly. That would be hilarious.
I would definitely have one of those if I could. I mean, my family knows already, but that would be fun.
Now I'm regretting not doing something like that because I mean, this was years ago. I knew that I wasn't having kids, so I wasn't at this public stage yet of talking about it. But if I were actually, now I want to do something, but it's too late. Like anybody that knows me already knows. But if you do decide to do that, please let us know, film it, and we'll make a podcast around it or something. I think that'd be fun.
That would be so fun.
How much do the questions bother you? I mean, does it really annoy you when you meet up with his family and they say, when are you having kids, or is it something you guys can just every time you're asked, just be like, we're working on it, wink. I suck at winking, by the way, so that face, sorry, that was awful.
No, I mean, at first they did kind of like annoy me a little bit, but after following you guys and listening to different podcasts, I was like, you know what, I don't owe anybody an explanation. And if they ask questions, my husband and I have taken on like one of the quotes from like Schitt's Creek, the TV show, and we're like, we just don't think that that's our journey. Like that journey doesn't suit us. So that's our new like I guess way to, if people do ask. And I it's not so much the questions that bother me anymore, it's the reaction to when people ask me the question and I say, I don't want them, or oh, they're too expensive, or whatever I say for my reasonings of why I don't want children. It's more so the responses that I get back of, oh, you're just being selfish, oh, you're just going to change your mind, like you change your mind all the time, you don't know any better. Like it's more so the reactions of when I explain something, which is super frustrating when you're trying to set those boundaries and kind of explain to people like, hey, I'm not doing this to, and I'm not trying to say anything bad about you because you chose to have children. I'm choosing not to have children, and I want you to respect my decision and not try to make me feel invalidated for that. Like as if like I'm going to change my mind is one of the biggest ones that I get. So basically you're telling me like as a 31-year-old grown woman that I don't know myself well enough to make this decision. I think I know myself pretty well. And I'm telling you that I'm not having kids, and I'm sorry that you can't accept that, but that's just how it is. And that's the things that kind of upset me the most or frustrate me the most is when people try to invalidate what I'm trying to tell them.
Do you think it's better to be honest, as hard as it is, because sometimes the conversation is like people will make up like, oh, we can't have kids, just to get people to shut up, even if that's not necessarily true. Do you feel that honesty is the best policy when talking about this?
I definitely think that honesty is the best policy when kind of navigating these conversations. I do have a couple people, that are, the child free, and some people that are childless because they want children but they can't have them. Um, and I have people in my life that have gone through IVF because they wanted to have children so badly. So I don't think that uh, by saying, I can't have kids, it's not something that I would do because I don't want to be just disingenuine, and I don't want to minimize the feelings of those people that are in my life that may be around the conversation that I'm having by saying I can't have kids when they couldn't, and they went through all of the IVF, the trials, and all of the shots and hormones and everything to have children. I wouldn't want to, I guess, make them feel awkward or make them feel badly in any way.
That makes sense. It's like using someone's tragedy to make something easier for yourself. So that I totally get why that would feel just icky.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I mean, we've been, we talk about how we're desensitized to a lot of things. We're desensitized to violence and things that happen in the world. And I feel like the child free choice needs to be desensitized. Like the more people hear, you think about it just in your own social circle or acquaintance circle too, I guess is part of social circle. But the more people hear just from you that I don't want kids, however they respond to that, and as uncomfortable as it is at the beginning, the more they hear that, the less shocking it is. So when they go to another, if they're in another setting and they hear someone also say, or they read something where it's like, I don't want kids, or a character on television is portrayed as not wanting to have kids, it's not so shocking because that's the problem. You're talking about people's reactions to you, how, they want to, how they respond. And, we're not respected when we say that, for the most part, when we say we don't want to have kids. But again, being honest about it and speaking up and saying, even if it's just I don't want them, the more people hear it, the less it benefits everybody, because the less shocking they'll take it. And I kind of feel like if people are shocked and they say something and other people are witnessing that gives them license to be appalled as well. Because maybe someone listening who's
Yeah.
a parent doesn't see anything wrong, but when you're in a group and all of a sudden all the parents get together and they want to convince you to have kids, even though when you leave the conversation they're talking about how hard it is to be a parent, but they won't tell you that because everybody's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
So it's kind of the same way. If you say I don't want to have kids and someone responds decently about it, other people will watch that and maybe think, oh, I don't have to be appalled because so and so is not appalled. Everyone has a choice. It's okay.
Right. Yeah. And I definitely I have a friend of mine. We became friends a few years ago, and she initially had told me, we were having a conversation, we were talking about work and life and husbands and uh, you know, households, whatever things. And I had asked her, I said, are you going to have children? And she said, no, are you? And I said, no, oh my God, me too. Like, there's another person like in my circle that like feels the same way that I do. And it was so awesome. And like the way that she kind of navigated that, like I feel like at that point when you ask those questions, it's kind of similar to like being a part of the LGBTQIA community, where like you're coming out essentially. And it was awesome just to be able to have another peer with that same mindset, that you have something else that you can share with each other. And I think that that's really important. um and like I've even had people in my life that I've told like, oh, we're not having kids, and some people that do have children are, oh my God, you're so smart, like, good for you. I sometimes wish I didn't have kids. And I'm like, oh my God, like, that's wild that, I, and that was one of the things that like I was always fearful of, is like, I would rather live the rest of my life potentially regretting, because, you can change your mind, as everyone says. um, potentially regretting not having children than having a child and regretting having it.
Absolutely, because you can't return the child. Like, there's nowhere that you can just bring it and say, like, well, I think there's one state in the US that you can actually take a child there until the age of 18, right? Somewhere in the Midwest. I don't know. But I mean, it's true. I mean, you hear I've heard a few child people voice and say, I'm scared that I will indeed regret being child free. And I can never tell, you can never tell to anyone, like, oh, you won't regret. Like, that's not going to happen. You can't say that. You never know. But it's absolutely true and I completely agree with you. I mean, I rather regret not having one than having one and making that kid and my lives miserable. That's not fair for the kid and it's not fair for me. So, it's interesting how, there's a lot of conversation um, going around the child free choice, and we're listening more voices coming into the conversation, even though there's still a lot of people who tell us that we need to stop talking about this because censorship is so real, so fucking real. And at the same time, I'm also seeing, I don't know if you girls have noticed this, maybe Kris, you've noticed this too, that there's also more conversation around regretful parents and regretful parents coming out with their stories. Most of them are coming out with their stories anonymously, most of them, because it's shameful to say, I don't want, I don't, I mean, I love my kids, but I regret having my kids. I don't want to be a parent. Why did I get into this mess? It's horrible. And when you hear these stories, nobody's telling them to shut up. People are going like, you're so brave.
Right.
This
Like,
is the thing. We need the child-free conversation so that there are less people saying that they regret having children.
yeah, it's almost like in some situations they're almost romanticizing and glamorizing the I love my kids, but like there's a whole I don't know if it's viral or whatever the terminology is on TikTok, but there's a TikTok that I seen and it was like a video and they're showing like I love my kids but I miss her, and then it's all like a photo stream of like what they looked like and where their life was before they decided to have children. And that is, it pops up on my feed here and there, and has a hashtag and whatever the case may be. But then as soon as you see something that's child free, you see all these hateful comments of, oh, you're selfish, you're not a real woman, you're not this, you're not that. And it some of those things are just so infuriating to me to see when you're romanticizing the fact that you love your kids but you miss who you were before you had them, and now because we're voicing that we're choosing not to have them, that's a problem for you.
And a lot of times those comments scare people from speaking out about being child free. So I wanted to ask you, why are you speaking out? I'm happy you're speaking out, but I want to know why you're speaking out, because I want anyone that's listening or watching will take encouragement as to why are you sharing your story.
I feel like a big part of it is that I think that there's a lot of people that may be on the fence, so to speak. Feeling the pressure from their families, feeling the pressure from their friends, and as a millennial, and at the age that I am right now, the all of your friends are married and all of your friends are having children, and like this is the time where all of these conversations come about. And for anyone that is younger, or thinking about what their future is going to look like, if they're going to have children, if they're not going to have children, I think that it's good to have like regular people, so to speak, kind of come on and like talk about things, and just kind of tell their own story, their background, um, and just kind of make sure that there's always like an open line of communication, and like making people feel like they're not alone. Like another part of my story is that as of a few years ago, I like officially was like, hey, I'm bisexual. And that is another thing that some people sometimes struggle with, and especially being child free. And the questions that you get when you're in a heterosexual presenting relationship that I get as a woman, where if in some alternate universe I hadn't met my husband and I was married to a woman instead, I wouldn't be getting all these questions of why are you not having kids, because they wouldn't expect it of me.
It's really funny that you say that because I'm also queer. I was having this conversation yesterday with someone who's saying that who's child free and identifies as lesbian, and was saying that there's pressure within the community to present as a normal couple, meaning having kids. And I was like, actually, no, we don't hear that. We need to have more of those conversations, because if you're in a same sex marriage, how you can be normalized is by having children. So I was like, oh, so we got to talk like how many people in the queer community are pressured to have kids because it makes them appear normal enough to certain crowds, if you know what I mean. Like, so it's interesting that you say that, because my brain was going, I was like, oh, we have to have more of these conversations, because that gets left out of the pressure conversation because we assume it's, you know, hetero most of the time. So it's really interesting to say that, because I'm like, there's more to the story than we know. We just assume that it's only straight couples that get pressured.
Ellen DeGeneres and Portia de Rossi, I think, have had to answer
Yeah.
when they're having kids a lot.
Yeah,
because I think,
but that's yeah,
because they're women. I mean, I think even if you're in a same sex relationship, I think if you're a woman, if you have a uterus, you're supposed to use it.
yeah.
It's interesting. I was yesterday in this event for with Trixie Films with Therese about her new documentary, and one of the speakers is a woman who identifies as a lesbian, and she's married to a trans man. And before the transition, when they presented as a lesbian couple, they didn't get the question. And as soon as he started presenting as a trans man, they were like, "When are you having kids?" Which is totally heteronormative, right? And so she was like, "I don't want to, like, I don't even want to be pregnant." And so people are like, "Well, you know that now there are seahorse daddies, right? Like, you know, trans men who get pregnant and have kids." So basically telling her husband that he should be the one to get pregnant, which is completely insane. Like, oh my God. Yeah. I mean, there's so much wrong about everything that has to do with the pressure, you know, to be a parent, even if you're not, I mean, part or not part of the LGBTQ community, but it's insane.
I have a question. Does her
Yeah.
husband have a uterus?
Yes.
Then he should have a baby. That's
This is not our Halloween episode, Kristen.
That's exactly that's exactly what I meant. As soon as if you have a uterus, then that's why they were telling him you should be like a seahorse dad. And it's just like, why? They don't want to have children. Stop it.
I forgot about that. I saw the film on Wednesday. I forgot about that because that totally slipped my mind, but that was a great clip to bring up, because again, doesn't that just go to show you, as long as you, as soon as you see someone who presents as a female with someone who presents as a man, it's like, okay, baby time. I mean, again, and I repeat myself on this, but it makes me really sad for even my grandmothers, because I mean, the reason why they had the amount of kids that they did, and I found out one grandmother had 3 miscarriages, so she ended up having 3 children, but they had no choice. I mean, things were different. That's what you did. No birth control, education, yes, to a point, but you know, how many child-free people, like child-free in spirit people, have roamed the earth since time began? Probably at least 50%. Well, because the population would have been apparently 2, but I can't wrap my head around how the Bible works. But still, like, it's just, it makes me sad.
For saying child free in spirit.
Pardon me?
Thank you for saying child free in spirit.
Yeah. Are you familiar with child free in spirit? That's something Kristen came up with. It's like you're not child free, but you want to be.
I like it.
Yeah. We need to hashtag that. But doesn't it make you think, like, this is what's been presented since time began, and now the world is the way it is because there's a lot of people. And people were, and what's happening in the US, I mean, I won't get into that, but this is why, bottom line, it's important to speak out. If you don't want to have kids, speak up. We have a guest who is, can I say brave? Because it's cool that you're speaking out and sharing your story. And back to Ellen and Portia for a second, because they're like so in the public eye and they're accepted as a couple, but it seems like to be more accepted if they would have had children. Because if you look at someone like Anderson Cooper, who's an openly gay man, he's now a dad. Andy Cohen's now a dad. They're single gay dads. Like it's cool by society standards. Those are not my words, but that's how it's presented. And it's ridiculous that people have to keep justify, or we want people who have big platforms to speak out about not having kids, but like you said, to your point, Kris, is that it's helpful when everyday civilians, we share our story. So to the child-free people who think, child-free people who hate the fact that child-free people talk about being child-free, they're not watching the show. But in the odd chance that you are, this is why we do it.
We also do it because we're going to try to convince Kris and her husband to do a talent show reveal of their child-free status.
You never know. I mean,
that would go viral in a second.
It would.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Oh my gosh.
I was going to say, it doesn't sound like something she really wants to do, but it would be really cool if you did.
I mean, I will definitely bring it up to my husband and feel like where he's at, because he's very much like a no bullshit kind of guy. He's very much like, this is what I'm doing. I don't care what you think. See you next weekend. Like, he's very like cut and dry with things like that, and he's super sarcastic. So he may think that it would be absolutely hilarious to have some sort of like, hey guys, we're going to have a party at the house. We have a really big announcement. Don't tell anybody about it. Don't put anything on social media. And then just like have a huge banner that like drops down and says like, we're not having kids. Here's cake and beer.
Tell them to bring presents. Tell them to bring presents, because they will think, they will think like, oh my God, they're finally going to announce that they're having a baby. Open
That's
all
just
the
more
presents
work for
first.
them. They'd have to return all the rattles and baby clothes.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Never mind. Okay, forget it. Forget the present part. Do household
not unless
stuff.
I made an Amazon gift list.
Yes, better.
Do an Amazon gift list.
Yeah. And open everything first, so like everything's not returnable, and then make the announcement, so you don't have to give anything back.
And make like the silly bow hat that they do when you're at a baby shower.
Yeah. Can I come? I so want to. I'll film. Oh my gosh.
Well, with that idea in mind, please think about it and let us know.
I will definitely let you know what he says.
Thank you. And our time together unfortunately has come to an end. Is there anything else you would like to add, Kris, before we say goodbye?
I would say to, people in the child-free community, or people that are, maybe kind of like taking a first look into child-free literature and podcasts and webisodes and Instagrams and TikToks and all of those kinds of things. One of the best pieces of advice that I got was, if it's not a fuck yeah, it's probably a no. So if someone asks you, you want to go on vacation? Fuck yeah, I want to go on vacation. You want to have kids? Probably no. So I would just say, be unapologetically yourself. And if someone has a problem with it, just remember that it's not their life that it's affecting, and it's about you and what's best for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for being here in our show as a guest. You're welcome to come later. If you do that, if you do the reveal, you're welcome to come and tell us here on the show as well. We would really enjoy that too.
Record it for sure.
But is that she didn't say fuck yes to that idea, so I'm not sure if it's like.
Well, she said she was going to talk to her husband. to see
Right.
what
It's a joint effort there.
Okay,
yeah.
fair
I
enough.
think it's a couple thing. So totally get it. Right. So this is the end of this episode. To everyone who's watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. That really helps. Down there, you can see the little seal. And if you're not watching us on YouTube or actually listening to us on a podcast, please go to YouTube and subscribe. And also, you could also rate us on, is it Apple Podcasts? That
So, yeah.
helps too. If you have any questions, any comments, anything at all that you want to tell us, you can always send us an email to childfreegirls@gmail.com. We promise we read all the emails, even though sometimes it takes a little bit to answer. And our website is childfreegirls.com.
You can also find us all over social media. We are at Childfree Girls on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, once every 3 months on TikTok, and we are on Clubhouse, not as Childfree Girls, but we run Childfree Club. So go download the Clubhouse app. It's audio chat. We have rooms 7 days a week. Search Childfree Club. Tell us Childfree Girls sent you, and we'll let you in if you're child free. And also, we are on Amazon. You can find our book, which is in paperback and on Kindle, Childfree Girls Comfort Food for Thought.
And Kris shared her favorite piece of advice that she got from watching all the child-free stuff she consumes. This was the piece of advice that stood out. So I want to know what your favorite piece of advice is that you have heard on any child-free anything, especially if it was ours, but it doesn't have to be, obviously. Whatever it is, tell us what it is, and also tell us where you got it. Because people are always looking for new. Tell us below.
Yes.
If you would share it publicly, that would be cool. But if you just want to share it just with us, then we will share it anonymously, because people, I think the more places people can go to get more perspectives and just like a whole universe of child-free thinking or whatever. I mean, share. So tell us where you got this genius piece of advice, and then other people will know where to go get some too.
I feel like a lot of it will be don't have kids. Like, that's it.
Yeah,
That's
but like,
piece of advice, don't have kids.
but if you're on the fence, it's harder. If you're on the
True.
fence, especially if you're on the fence because you're so conditioned to do what you're supposed to do that you can't knock that thing out of your ear.
Mm-hmm.
It's good advice.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye. No, you say bye.
No, you say bye.
Oh my God, I'm leaving.
You leave first.
I'm going.
Bye.
Bye.